Get ready to rock radio, music you want to hear.
What about your own music then in the 1970s? Was there one event or situation where, it was what we might call a break? You've been presumably working away and then, suddenly there was an event that moved things up a notch, really, Geoff?
Well, I think when I first moved to London from music college, or I graduated from music college, so I was probably about 22, something like that. I think that was the sort of time when, it was, there were obviously a lot of people around London making music, and it was a make or break thing for me. I think that, I was answering a lot of ads in Melody Maker because that used to have the back page there was musicians wanted, and so there'd be all sorts of ads for various things. And I think that the real thing that changed it for me was I answered an ad for a pop band that wanted a keyboard player, and so I went along to the audition, and I borrowed a synth, a Moog synthesizer, a Mini Moog, from a friend of mine that I was working with. So I took that along to the audition, and it was actually a disco singer who'd had a #1 hit called Tina Charles at the time, a sort of disco act. And it just so happened that Trevor Horn was putting a band together. I went in there and did the audition, and he said, "Yeah, okay." He said, "You got the job." And I said, "Well, how come? You got other guys see?" He said, "No, because you bought that synthesizer. You think that's really cool." So that was it, really. So that was a kind of a life-changing moment, because from that point on, we did a few tours with Tina, and then she had some kids and went off the road, and Trevor and myself started to work together in the studio, doing various bits and pieces, writing stuff, producing all sorts of different people. Trevor normally was the guy producing, and I was the guy who was providing the music, and so that's how we built up our studio technique in a way, was because I started to try and get sounds that sounded like an orchestra out of all these different types of keyboards, and he'd start to get all these production effects together. And really, I suppose the Bungles kind of grew out of that, to the point where when we did the demo of Video Killed the Radio Star, which he'd written most of it with Bruce Worley, and then he brought me in to do some final things on it, we started to take that around. We did the demo, which didn't sound that different from the final recording, although there were changes we made in the middle and stuff. But essentially, it was the same kind of thing. It had the radio voice and all the rest of it. And actually, Tina Charles did the backing vocals on it on the original demo, and we took it around, and we got rejected everywhere. We took it. I remember we said, well, we physically used to go around all the record labels in those days, where you'd actually go and see the A&R guy, and you'd play the music to him, and he'd go, "Yeah, no, it's not really for us, that." So we got rejected by everybody, apart from I sent it via my girlfriend at the time, who was working at Island Music, and we'd already been turned down by Island Records anyway. But I sent it via my girlfriend at the time, and she played it for her boss, who said, "This is really good, I'm going to send this over to the States." And sent it over to the States, and Chris Blackwell, the head of Island, for some reason happened to listen to it, and he called them up the next day and said, "You've got to sign these guys." And so, from being a couple of guys that were just jobbing around the place, all of a sudden we got signed to Island Records. They signed our publishing, we signed us as producers, and then we got cracking and got started to make the album.
Yeah. And the #1, which we've referred to, Video Kill the Radio Star, that was Island Records. I think it was their first #1, wasn't it?
That's right. It was their first #1, and they'd had about 10 #2s before that. Roxy Music and Traffic and all sorts of bands that they used to be on the label, and Bob Marley and the Wailers, and But yeah, that was the first one. And it was funny because Chris Blackwell didn't like the name The Buggles. He thought it was a stupid name.
Huh.
And we said, no, it's got to be that because it's a spoof of the Beatles, you know.
Mm.
It's like the sort of artificially studio-prepared version of the Beatles. And he said, no, he didn't like it. So they tried to drop the off the front of it and just call it Buggles. They thought that was better, but we said, no, it's got to be The Buggles. And he said, as you did when the song went to number one, he sent us both a telegram which said, I always thought The Buggles was a great name. So,
well, he would do, wouldn't he? Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, it was that was a great time for us. I mean, it launched, you know, not only myself and Trevor, but you know, it set us on a whole career path that you know we've been doing ever since.
Get ready to rock radio.
Are there any projects that have given you particular satisfaction, Geoff, over the years, even if they haven't been particularly, you know, successful commercially, let's say?
Commercial success is obviously nice. You know, you get you know, there's this thing that reaches a lot of people, but by the same token, I mean, some of the other projects that I've done, particularly some of the side projects with the people like Greg Lake, Glenn Hughes, John Wetton on the Icon project. You know, these are sort of musical exercises that really are something that comes from the heart rather than trying to exist in the constraints of the commercial world. And you know, I think that helps for a much more natural progression of music and getting your ideas across. And you know, it reaches the people who will appreciate it, and I think that's all you can expect. You know, I think that one of the problems what we had with Asia was because that first album was so successful, and the expectations were so great to not even parallel it, but to overshadow it. Certainly by the record label, you become a bit of a kind of a shire horse, you know, and you're not able to get your own music out there. And I think, you know, the beauty of the situation that I've had over the years is being able to work with all these iconic people. You know, as I said, Greg Lake from ELP and John Wetton from King Crimson and you know, Glenn Hughes from Deep Purple. You know, these are the bands that I grew up on. You know, and these were the bands that you know I was in full admiration of. Particularly the bands that I've mentioned because they all had very much a keyboard presence in those bands, and so it's been, you know, over the years it's been a real privilege to be able to work with all of these people.
And what about any opportunities that you've maybe turned down, and when you look back you think I should have done that? Have there been any sort of situations where maybe simply through maybe scheduling, you know, because you've been so busy with Yes and Asia?
Not really, no, because I think that, you know, I've always had a fairly full diary, and all of these bands, really, all the bands I've been involved with, have all had a kind of natural full cycle, and certainly coming back into Yes was a real, you know, was a great thing for me because it, you know, it was almost like it had gone full circle from when I first joined them in 1980 and had the opportunity to come back in 4 years ago. And I think also when we got the opportunity to put the reunion together with Asia again, you know, back in 2006, that was again something that I think we all felt that we'd maybe not done enough, you know, with the original band. I mean, there were only really the first two albums that had the whole original lineup on. So it was nice to be able to go back in the studio with the original lineup. We did a lot of touring, particularly from 2006 to 2011, pretty much solidly. So, you know, all of those aspects, I think, really have helped me become, you know, more appreciative of being in those bands. I mean, even down to some Buggles reformations that we've done over the last few years. I mean, I did a show with Trevor earlier this year where it was more to do with his production, but obviously, we're very much back in the saddle doing what we do. So I think that, looking at all these things that I've done over the years, it's nice to know that they're still viable and still ongoing.
Yeah, and you don't feel in all this time, in your long career, there's been any particular occasion when you've had to pass over an opportunity, and then, I mean, what you're saying really is that things have come full circle almost now, haven't they? And you've got...
Yeah, I mean, I did have one opportunity, which may or may not have been a good thing, was that I was asked to join Foreigner at a time when they were really, huge, and, I think they just had the Foreigner 4 and the follow-up album, which I Want to Know What Love Is, was on it. And I got a call from their manager at the time, a guy called Bud Prager, and he said, I spoke to Mick Jones, and Mick Jones wants you to join Foreigner. And at that time, we just started rehearsing with Asia. And I said, well, I'm sorry, man, but we just formed another band. And the guy said, that's never going to go anywhere. No, believe me, he said, this is what you need to do. You need to join Foreigner right now. And I said, well, no, sorry, I can't. So I suppose that was the one that got away. And but aside from that, no, most of the other things, I think I've sort of lived the dream in many ways.
In retrospect, how do you feel now about Foreigner? Because obviously they consolidated, over the years, and they've actually reformed in various shapes and forms, haven't they, in recent times?
Yeah, I mean, I always loved their music. Again, I think there was that very, very strong songwriting element, and I do favour bands that have generally got that at the core, and I think that, if you look how many hits they had, and their whole catalogue is full of real kind of evergreens, real gem songwriting stuff. And I think that certainly from my standpoint, I would have enjoyed playing that kind of material, but it was really just the timing of it that didn't fall into place.
Yeah, and I think most observers would say, well, you haven't done that badly. Asia, yes, dipping in and out and all the rest of it. And
I know, and the other thing being, I think that those bands, I was very much a contributor as a writer. I think if I'd been in Foreigner, I would have just been playing somebody else's parts, There's a lot to be said for playing yourself and playing your own material. And certainly that's why I think Asia's very close to my heart, particularly because I was there at the beginning and was a significant contributor in the writing throughout and the performance. So I was really playing myself in that. And certainly, the Yes albums that I've done, I felt that, Drama and Flight From Here and Heaven and Earth, those three albums, very much I was allowed to be myself on. And I think that, it's kind of important if you're serious about your own music, that you're not just performing on other people's stuff, which is fine. I don't mind playing covers and that kind of thing. I play in a local covers band, and we just do classic rock and roll hits. But I think from a standpoint for your own musical well-being, I think it's important to be part of new music and continue to create.
And you may like to know that you can hear a full-length Geoff Downes special feature. More of that interview in October 2015, shortly before the release of that Downes Braid Association album. You can follow the link to our Mixcloud page from getreadytorockradio.com, the homepage. That also gives you access to a whole range of special features, interviews and show highlights. And in addition to the Geoff Downes Hour Special, you can also catch up with his musical partner Chris Braid, also chatting in an Hour Special at our Mixcloud page. Thank you for listening.